Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. It's just me. This is your before the box score. This is the football podcast from Rockin' Radio. You know that. It's a weird time of year. Parker's on assignment back home for winter break, just to take some time off and be a kid. Of course, a bunch of other us are going to be going through the holidays traveling. I'm going to be going to the game, so that's going to be some extra travel on my end. So it's a tough time right now to kind of figure out schedules. And what we wanted to do was at least give you something, right? You're on the road, you're on your sled back home in winter wonderland. I wanted to give you at least a little something for your ears while you go in the car, traveling with the kids or on the plane, wherever you are. A little bit of Mizzou football podcasting to get you there. So this is what this is going to be. It's going to be me for just a couple minutes here. I'll go over the major news stories that have broken so far since we last recorded. I also took some time to chat with some guys from Land Grant Holy Land, which is our SB Nation Ohio State site. We got Matt Tamanini from there. He took the time to talk about Ohio State and the Cotton Bowl game against Mizzou from his point of view. So you get a little bit behind the scenes from the Buckeye standpoint that's going to be at the end of this episode. But we'll kick it off with the news so far. The big one that we're going to talk about is yet another transfer into Missouri. This one from the U, Miami, Florida. Corey Flagg Jr., who is a graduate student linebacker. He is leaving the U to come to Mizzou. Now, if you remember, our boy Blake Baker, he used to be employed by Miami. And in fact, he was responsible for recruiting Corey Flagg to come to Coral Gables. So Corey is used to Blake Baker. He is familiar with the guy. He's familiar with the scheme. He has played in that scheme while he is with the Hurricanes, that 4-2-5 that Blake Baker has brought with him to Mizzou as well. So does he know the guy? Yes, he is familiar with Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator. Does he know the scheme? Yes, he has been playing basically the weak side outside linebacker role in the 4-2-5 since he has been on campus with Miami. That is all good. And then the question comes, is he any good? Right? He was a very high 3-star coming out of high school, kind of borderline 4-star, depending on the recruiting service that you subscribe to. But Corey, I mean, he has played every single year that he has been in college. He did not ever take a redshirt year. So his first year was the COVID year in 2020. He played 8 games. Then in 21, he played 12 games. 22, he played 11 games. 23, this past year, he played 12 games. So he is a pure graduate student. He essentially has 2 years to play one, thanks to the COVID extensions, because he has not taken a red shirt yet. So if for some reason he plays 4 games or fewer this year, then he could technically come back. That is true for Marcus Carroll, the Georgia State transfer as well. But like I said with Marcus Carroll, if he plays less than 4 games, obviously that's not a good thing. So let's just assume, much like Marcus Carroll, he is a 1-year rental, except this time he's going to be at the linebacking position. The thing about Corey Flagg is that when he was used with the Hurricanes, he was definitely used as a havoc machine. So if you're thinking, okay, well, what does this mean from a roster standpoint? Does that mean Tyron Hopper's for sure gone? That might be. This might be the insurance for that. Or, maybe, I mean, even if you accept an invite, I don't think that necessarily means you are for sure gone. But if he spurns that invite, decides to come back, I don't know. At least that means that you have a backup piece that can rotate in at the same time and spell him. But I think for the coaching staff's purposes and for our purposes, it seems like Corey Flagg was brought in to be the replacement piece for Tyron Hopper, especially since Chuck Hicks earlier today, this is Friday the 22nd, came out and said that he was definitely coming back for his 7th year. So we are assuming that Hopper is gone and Flagg is going to be his replacement. Flagg is a havoc monster, just like Hopper was. He has 1,531 snaps in his career. He's made 160 tackles. 21 of those were for loss. He's got 5.5 sacks, 28 run stuffs, 5 passes broken up, an interception, and a forced fumble. This dude likes to get after it. When I was watching Miami highlights, he would mostly line up as an outside linebacker, kind of like a weak side guy. Sometimes he'd be strong side or that inside linebacker spot. He even lined up a couple of times that I saw as like a hand in the dirt edge rusher. So like that's he likes to bring pressure, and Miami used him to do so. Now, the reason why he's in the portal is that his usage was dwindling as time went on. He had 557 snaps in that 2021 sophomore year, and then 418 in 2022. And that went down to 369 snaps in 2023. I couldn't tell if he was injured or if someone had usurped him, but his usage had gone down. His old DCs at Missouri having a great time, and they needed a linebacker. It made a ton of sense. So I don't know how we're going to see him. I don't know how Blake Baker wants to use him, but he is a guy not only just in size but in style that Tyron Hopper can be. And he seems to be that replacement on the outside, the weak side linebacker spot, a guy who can bring havoc and bring a ton of experience, first and foremost, to a linebacking core that was definitely going to need it. So that's good. We've talked about Blake Baker. Let's talk about the coordinators, because that's the second big news item that's hit this past week. Both Kirby Moore and Blake Baker were extended. Their contracts were extended. Now, the details have not come out yet. I have not seen them. Again, it's the 22nd. It's the morning of the 22nd. I have not seen that yet. But as Eli Drinkwitz promised, he said, keep your eyes on the social media. We might be releasing something soon. And lo and behold, both Kirby and Blake had their contracts extended. This is good. This is obviously a good thing. I know Kirby Moore's name was batted around for the head coaching position at Boise, which Boise was never really truly considering him. They were considering his brother a lot more than him. A lot of people in the industry thought that for Kirby as a head coach, he needs a little bit more seasoning as an OC. So if he were to leave, it'd be probably for another coordinator job, at least for the open jobs that were on the market this year. They all felt he needed some more time. Blake Baker, on the other hand, has been a coordinator and a position coach for a very long time, certainly longer than Kirby Moore. His alma mater is Tulane. Now, you can't just say, oh, this dude went to this school, therefore he will always consider that job as his dream job. That's just not the case. Think about you. Would you want to go work for Mizzou, or would whatever your particular alma mater is? I mean, it's work. Doesn't that lessen the thought of and the joy of being at your college a little bit, even if it is something that's true to your heart, and working for something that's close to your heart, it can still ruin it. So I would not say that just because someone is an alum means that they're an ironclad lock to then go back and coach that school's football team. However, Blake Baker's name was thrown around for the open Tulane job once Willie Fritz went to Houston. Obviously, he did not go. John Summerall is going to be the head coach there, but this is important. The ghost of BK is telling me right now that you want your coordinators to go on to head coaching jobs or better OC jobs. And even Eli Drinkwitz said that earlier this year. He said, I don't want my guys to leave for lateral positions. Meaning a position coach at a Power 5 program going to another one of those, being a coordinator at Mizzou and then going to be a coordinator at South Carolina, or Oklahoma State. He doesn't want lateral moves. He wants his guys, he wants his staff to take the position that they're in and go to a position that is better than where they currently are. So think of a Jacob Peeler becoming an OC somewhere, Blake Baker or Kirby Moore becoming a head coach somewhere, or hell, Al Pogue becoming a head coach somewhere. You want them to go somewhere where the job is a higher title. That's what he wants. And of course, BK would tell you that's a good thing. And I would tell you the same thing. It is a good thing. When you are recruiting students, when you're recruiting athletes, you say, hey, when you come to Mizzou, we're going to make you so good. We're going to put you on such a good team that you're going to be able to get drafted, right? That's your job. We're going to get you your first job out of school, because that's what we do. We place guys in jobs. We're job placement school. That's our program. That's our football team. We get you in the NFL. Same thing for coaches. Eli Drinkwitz goes out there and he pitches, a position coach at Mizzou or a coordinator at Mizzou. He says, look, man, you come here, you run my stuff in my program. I'm going to get you a head job. I'm going to get you a G5 coaching job. I'm going to get you a Ohio State, Texas, USC coordinator job. That's what you're going to get when you come with me. Because as much as we want coordinators and position coaches to work and stay here for their entire life, like Gary Pinkel spoiled us, at the end of the day, that's just not realistic. And as Clemson has showed us, it's actually good to move some of those guys out and get new blood into the system so you can stay relevant and stay current with what the current football mind is. So it is a good thing, though. I say all that to say it's a good thing that they're holding on to Kirby and Blake, because this will be Blake's third year. This will be Kirby's second year. And boy, Mizzou is returning a lot. And they had the potential to return even more than what we already think they are. Obviously, I'm privy to some rumors, but who knows what it's going to be. But even then, you're returning your quarterback, you're returning a good chunk of your offensive line, you're returning almost every receiver. On defense, yeah, you're getting some restarts on the interior, but you still have some guys coming back. Your secondary, it seems like there's not going to be a huge drop off. And from the portal, you're bringing in some huge additions. The statement Missouri's making, I said at the last show, I'll say here, the statement that Missouri is making, both with their investment in their coordinators, their investment in the portal, and how they're bringing guys in, is that we are making a run for this new expanded 12-team playoff now. Not 2 years from now, not 3 years from now, not maybe. Now, 2024, we are going for it. That is what their actions are saying. That's what the investment is saying. So locking down your coordinators for another year, keeping that familiarity, even if that means that the opposition has a year of tape on these guys, keeping that the same, bringing back those starters, those older starters, that experience, that is what all of this is saying, which again is wild to me. I cannot believe I'm sitting here realistically thinking that Missouri not only is investing in a shot in the playoff, but actually might have a decent chance at making it, given this schedule and what they're returning. I mean, it's all early. We're putting the cart before the horse here a little bit. I understand that because the season's not even technically over. But bringing back your coordinators just continues that conversation of we're making a run in 24, which is very exciting. It's fun to be excited about your football team and think that they can do great things. Not only this year when they won 10 games, possibly 11, but then turn around and make another special year next year. That's just too much fun. But that's going to be next year, right? And, we're going through the holiday season now. And at the end of it, before New Year's, after Christmas and Hanukkah and all that stuff, we get the Cotton Bowl. And that's going to be the next test for this year, the last test for this 2023 Missouri football team. So I had the liberty of going on to Land Grant Holy Land's podcast and talk about Missouri football there. If you're interested in hearing that interview, I would suggest seeking them out. Land Grant Holy Land, you can type that into your search bar. You can search for podcasts. Matt Tamanini is the guy who did it. I was on there for about 20, 25 minutes. They're nice enough to let me talk mostly uninterrupted about Mizzou football there. And, of course, we returned the favor. I brought Matt on to our show. Yes, another Matt into Rock M Nation, like we need another one. But at least this guy is in the scarlet and gray variety of Matts. He was kind enough to talk about Ohio State, how great it is to be a fan there, what they're looking for, and what we could potentially see from that matchup as we get into next Friday in the new year with the New Year's Six Bowls. So sit back, relax, drive safe travels. Hopefully everything goes well. And here's the interview with Land Grant Holy Land on the Ohio State Buckeyes. As promised, we are joined today by Matt Tamanini from Land Grant Holy Land. A little look behind the enemy lines into Ohio State from an Ohio State guy who follows the team and can tell us everything that we need to know about this matchup when it comes to his Buckeyes versus our Tigers. Matt, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it, Nate. I'm looking forward to it.
I got to ask this question because as Missouri fans, we have seen our ups and our downs. And it's been a long 30, 40 years, however long you've been a fan. We've had highs, we've had lows, we've had 10-win seasons, we have 4-win seasons. I got to ask, as someone who was a fan, and I'm not being facetious about it, what's it like to be a fan of a team that's always recruiting at a top 10 level, has always sent a bunch of guys to the NFL, almost always wins 10 games, has the best winning percentage in the history of the sport? What is that like? How cool is that?
Well, Nate, how long do you have? Because I am an Ohio State grad who is the son of 2 Ohio State grads. So I am a lifelong Buckeye, and I am old enough to remember when that was not always the case. Ohio State has always been hitting on some of those things, but I came of age in the John Cooper era where the top 10 recruiting classes and guys in the NFL did not necessarily always correlate to Big Ten championships or competing for national championships. So the past 20 years, especially up until 3 years ago when Ohio State started its current losing streak to Michigan, it was great. The outcomes were great, but I will tell you, the games themselves have not always been as exciting, partially because of the way that Jim Tressel coached football. The results were awesome. The games were kind of boring and sluggish. Urban Meyer started with a more exciting offense, so those games were fun. But then he also, I guess maybe it has to do with coaches getting a little older, got a little bit more sluggish and tedious. So the outcomes for the past 20 years, discounting the ends of the last 3 seasons, have been awesome. It's been fun. Love seeing Ohio State players called early and often in the NFL draft. But I also think it has to do with how much of your individual personality is tied into the success of the college football team. And that this also rings true for professional teams of whatever sport you follow. There are, because Ohio State, and you might have seen these studies and graphics go around throughout the college football season, Ohio State, according to whoever does this tallying, has the largest fan base in college football. One, because it's for decades and generations now been one of the largest, if not the largest, universities in the country. That means that there are some very vocal people in the fan base, as there is for every fan base, who always like to be mad about something. And just because of the law of large numbers, because Ohio State does have such a large fan base, there are just, quantity wise more of them. So it appears to be louder than it actually is. So that, especially with the advent and influx of social media, has made things a little bit less enjoyable despite some of the successes. So yes, would obviously take what we have had for the past 20 years over the converse, or as opposed to what we saw with John Cooper. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are peaks and valleys. And like I said, if you only care about Ohio State being the best at everything, and like that is the only thing in your life that matters, then you can have some ups and downs. But if you're a fan who just enjoys the sport and likes Ohio State winning a lot of games in double digits and playing in New Year's 6 games and stuff like that in college football playoffs, it's been pretty good. So are there complaints? Absolutely. I think it is the right and the responsibility of fans to point out issues, which there are a lot of with this year's team. But when you take a step back and look at it, yeah, things are pretty good to be a Buckeye fan these days.
So heading into this game, you've had starting quarterback go into the portal and end up in Syracuse, New York, of all places, which kudos to you guys for winning so many games with a Syracuse caliber quarterback.
You guys know how big of a draw those journalism programs are. So between Missouri and Syracuse, that must be where the hot spots for everybody who wants to be on TV after their playing careers are over.
Yeah, them and Northwestern, we all constantly write about how much the other one sucks in our New York Times think pieces. So McCord is there. Obviously, you have a backup running back who's in the portal. And then you have just a slew of NFL talent guys who could be going in the draft and maybe playing, maybe not. So, you're going to know a little bit more than I am as far as who's anticipated to leave or whoever. But like at the end of the day, what does this game against Missouri mean for this Ohio State team?
If you would have asked me that question on, I guess that would have been December 11th, I would have said the game doesn't mean anything. I mean, there's so many players gone. It's a disappointment coming off the fact that they lost a 1-score game to Michigan. Could have been the number 1 team in the college football playoff if they had won that game. Now this is just at most an exhibition game. But then on Tuesday the 12th, we got word as to what players had decided to play this game that could have potentially sat out. And of all the players who could have come back or could have left, the vast majority of them decided they wanted to play this game. Now, that does not mean that they will all be back for the 2024 season, but the number 1 cornerback on the team, Denzel Burke, will be playing in the Cotton Bowl. Number 2 wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka. The number 2 cornerback, Jordan Hancock. The number 1 offensive lineman, Donovan Jackson. The number 2, a starting defensive end, Jack Sawyer will be playing. Starting linebacker, Cody Simon will be there. Starting defensive tackle, Tyleek Williams. They will all be there. All of those guys could have potentially left for the NFL draft. They decided not to do that. So I think that kind of re-energized the fan base in terms of what to expect from this game, because I think a lot of people had just written off, okay, well, Ohio State's going to lose. We're going to get to see some young players, which is good because, as you talked about, when you recruit at a top 10 level, sometimes you don't see those players in the first couple of years. So we thought, okay, this is an opportunity with all the guys in the portal, all these guys going to the NFL. we're going to get to see players like CJ Hicks, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis. And while we still might see that just because of all of the guys who are in the portal who are depth players, they're not going to be the ones starting necessarily in a lot of these positions. Ohio State is still waiting to hear whether Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson, and JT Tuimoloau are going to play in the Cotton Bowl. We're recording on, not have to pull the curtain back too far, on Friday, December 22nd. They are off for the holidays until they gather together on Saturday the 23rd to head down to Texas. We imagine that those announcements will happen after they are done with their time with their family. So depending on when this comes out, we might know these answers by now or by then. Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously Heisman Trophy finalist, Biletnikoff winner, is not expected to play. Duh. I mean, I don't think anyone really expected him to play for Ohio State ever again. But he has been at practice, at least. I don't know that he's a full participant, but he's been at practice doing drills, not in full pads. That could just mean maybe he will play, and he's just been there and didn't want to get hurt during practice. Who knows? But Travion Henderson and JT Tuimoloau, who are both guys who could be first round or second round picks, I think the lean is that they're going to play in this game, which would be huge for Travion Henderson because, as you mentioned, Chip Trainum was the number 2 running back this season. He is in the portal. Evan Pryor, who was the number 4 running back, is in the portal. Mayan Williams, who was the backup running back this season, he's going to the NFL, but he had season-ending surgery back in November. So if Trey does not play, it's really thin. Dallin Hayden, who is a guy who played really, really well the last 2 seasons, but actually was redshirted this year, he would have been the only running back of consequence for the Buckeyes. So if Travion Henderson and JT Tuimoloau do decide to play, that is a big, big difference for both the offense and the defensive side of the balls. We don't know if they will or not, but their presence in the game will be a difference maker for Ohio State one way or the other.
Yeah, I saw that, Travion Henderson's getting like 3rd, 4th, 5th round kind of projections, depending on who you ask and what day it is. So, I mean, if you want to try and improve your stock, you come back. But at the same time, you don't really improve your stock as a running back when you come back for college. So
and it's another year of tread on the tires. So it's like, if I were him, I just you try to get that first NFL contract, get it behind you, do really well, and then get your second NFL contract, which is where you make the most money anyway. But if he wants to come back, I don't think anybody wearing scarlet and gray is going to complain about that in 2024.
I mean, I also am assuming that rumor that Marvin Harrison and Travion Henderson are not getting $25 million to come back and play. I'm assuming that is a total farce.
No, first off, Ohio State, there's Ohio State leading up to National Signing Day or early signing period this past week, had a couple players flip. And I am not someone who will ever begrudge a high school student and their family making whatever the best decision is for their family. So if they wanted to go somewhere else for personal reasons, for family reasons, for financial reasons, if they just like the weather better, go where you want to be. I am never going to be mad about anybody leaving a school to go somewhere else if it's a better fit. But a lot of the conjecture and reports about that were that Ohio State's NIL money has not necessarily lived up to other schools, specifically when it comes to incoming freshmen. Ohio State prefers to allocate as much of its NIL money as possible to returners. One, because I think it's one of the investments, like, you have a little bit of a better idea as to what they're capable of. Despite that fact, I cannot imagine $25 million going to a player. If you get that, I mean, look, Marvin Harrison Jr. is in a situation different than almost anybody else in this draft class because of who his dad is. Like, who knows how much money he is going to get from his dad or whatever. But just from a generational wealth standpoint, like, he is in a much different situation. If he wants to come back, if money is not an issue for him, of all the guys that could potentially go in the top 10, 15 in the draft, he's probably in a different position because his dad is an NFL Hall of Famer.
Right.
But still, $25 million is probably not going to happen. And he would be foolish to turn down guaranteed $30 million plus endorsements if he is a first, top 5 pick. So who knows? I think that's probably an over-exaggeration in many, many ways.
I mean, considering the people that I've heard who run these things say that like blue chip rosters run at like $8 million for the entire team, I'm just assuming that's
just silly. It's all silly.
Anyway, so obviously Kyle McCord is now an Orangeman. Well, no, orange quarterback.
Just an orange. He's an orange. Maybe a Clementine.
Hey, there you go. He's gone. He's not playing. And so I'm assuming it's going to be Devin Brown because he's kind of been the only other quarterback that's taken snaps this year. I took a look at the few games that he was in, and he's a redshirt freshman. I think he's run 16 times from non-sack wise for 46 yards and thrown 22 passes with a 54% completion rating. Small, tiny sample sizes. I have no idea what to make of this. How much does the offense change when he is in charge?
It's interesting because coming into the season, Devin Brown and Kyle McCord, they actually went into the season not officially having a starter named. I mean, Kyle, because he was the older player, everyone kind of assumed that it was his job. And that's the way it mostly played out. He started the first 2 games, but Ryan Day continued to say that, like, he's not naming a starter. Both guys will play. Devin Brown is younger, has a bigger upside than Kyle McCord ever did. But the problem is that Kyle was somebody who you could probably rely on to not make bad decisions.
Sure.
And Devin, like a lot of younger players had a tendency to try to force throws, to fumble the ball, to throw interceptions. But that was in the fall. That was in August. In September. Has there been progress made between now and then? Who knows? We started to see Devin get a little bit more playing time as the season went on, not necessarily as a thrower, but in short yardage and red zone situations, coming in as a run threat. And that is somewhere where he has a little bit more explosiveness than Kyle did. He is a much more athletic guy in the pocket. Kyle is, for not necessarily having a ton of opportunities, is still a really good athlete, and I think he's going to do well in Syracuse. But Devin's more of a traditional kind of scrambler. He likes to move the pocket, but he actually got hurt and didn't play the last 6 weeks of the season because he hurt himself in a goal line push, I think against Penn State. He is expected to be completely healthy. He looked bad in the times that he played as like a thrower early in the season. He looked better as a runner. He looked a little bit more competent. He did actually have some opportunities to throw in those goal line situations, and he looked fine. We don't get to see practice, so we don't know if there has been other progress made. Do I go into this game thinking Devin Brown is going to like set the world on fire? No. But like it could happen. Like, I mean, who knows? Bowl games are weird. Even if Marv's not there, if you've got Travion Henderson in the backfield, you still have Emeka Egbuka to throw to. You've got a 5-star Carnell Tate is a true freshman who's probably going to be the number 2 wide receiver in this game. So like he's going to have weapons, but the offense will probably change a little bit just because they might allow him to do some things with his legs, especially if some of those weapons aren't there. But I don't expect him to set the world on fire. I don't expect him to come out and be CJ Stroud or Justin Fields or Dwayne Haskins. But he could be better than what Kyle McCord is. I don't know. I mean, I wish I had an answer for you, but because he didn't play a whole lot and he got injured down the season, it looked like they were trying to ramp up his snaps late in the season or towards the middle of the season. And maybe that speaks to improved practice performance, or maybe it just speaks to the fact that Ohio State really, really struggled for a time in the red zone. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. If I was betting money on like who is going to be the better quarterback in this game, probably would not put it on Devin Brown.
Well, here's the thing. Missouri fans can mark their time in their fandom like rains on a tree with curses. We got the North End Zone curse. We talk about that one all the time. We talk about the 5th down. But Missouri in a losing effort against the backup quarterback is a just nightmare scenario that occurs time and time again. It almost happened again this year against Florida when this kid Max Brown came in once Graham Mertz went down and just zone read us to death and almost won the game. So that is my nightmare scenario where Devin Brown comes in, Travion Henderson decides to play, and you all just run it 50 times between the two of them, and we can't stop it. What is the realistic opportunity of that happening? Or are your receivers that good where they're going to try and force them to throw the ball more?
I mean, I think Ryan Day is a quarterback pass first coach, and he's still, despite my years of protestations, the guy who calls the offensive plays. And even if Marv isn't there, Julian Fleming, who is the number 3 wide receiver, has entered the transfer portal. He was mostly a blocker this year. So even though Emeka Ibuka and Carnell Tate, who I mentioned a minute ago, are probably going to be the main 2 wide receivers, Cade Stover, who's a starting tight end, is probably out due to injury concerns. I think they'll still try to throw the ball. Will they, if Travion Henderson does play, will they rely on him maybe a little bit more than they would have if Kyle and Marv and Cade were still playing? Probably, and they should. I mean, Travion Henderson went from the first half of the season kind of being banged up and looking like a guy who maybe never would reach the potential that he showed as a true freshman a couple seasons ago, to legitimately, in my mind, if he had played the way he did in the back half of the season for the entire season, probably would have been a better Heisman Trophy candidate than Marvin Harrison Jr. was. Wow. So will they give him the opportunities to run the ball if he plays? Yeah, probably. Will that mean that they will, throw the ball less than 20 times? Probably not. I mean, I think that just Ryan Day would go into hives and convulsions if they didn't throw the ball that much. So I would expect them to still be fairly balanced. They've done a really good job this season of having a good run-pass balance on offense. That's not something they had in the past when they had quarterbacks like Haskins, Fields, and Stroud. So maybe just because the quarterback, and now perhaps quarterbacks, have not been at that level, that's been something that they've been able to focus on a little bit more. But that's always the goal of the offense. So I don't expect that to change too much, unless Devin goes in and just looks absolutely horrendous and throws, picks on 3 of the first 4 drives or something like that.
Sure. So it sounds like you think that Marvin Harrison will not be playing in this game, but obviously sitting here on Friday the 22nd, we have not heard anything official yet. Where does Marvin Harrison rank in the pantheon of Ohio State receivers? Ooh. And then how essential is he to this offense doing what it does the best?
I mean, that's really hard. And again, I mentioned earlier, I'm old. So I remember guys like David Boston and Terry Glenn. I don't remember Chris Carter as a Buckeye, although I was alive for his entire college career, but I remember him in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Then you throw in guys, and Joey Galloway too, but then you throw in some of the more modern guys, like Garrett Wilson and Terry McLaurin and Chris Olave. And then guys like during my era when I was in school, with like Ted Ginn Jr. and Santonio Holmes. Mm-hmm. Ohio State has some really great wide receivers. If you're just talking about skill sets, Marv's up there. I mean, Marv's up there with a Terry Glenn or a David Boston, who were just freak athletes and incredible guys in terms of just making things happen. Ted Ginn Jr. too, obviously with his speed. In terms of just pure route running, he's also, incredible. Look at the lineage that he comes with because of his father, not only just the physical gifts, but I think what really set Marv apart this season and during his entire time in Columbus, to be honest with you, was his work ethic. You would never hear of a day that Ohio State beat reporters were at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center and Marv wasn't getting extra work after practice, with himself on a Monarch jugs gun, just catching balls over and over. So I think in terms of the natural ability, the skills, the work ethic, he's up there. The thing that, might ding him a little bit is the fact that he's only going to play 3 years. And really his freshman year, he didn't play a ton. He came in as the number 2, maybe 3, if I'm remembering correctly, wide receiver in a class. So he didn't come in as the guy. And he worked himself into that. And, again, just because of the era of college football that we're in, he's not going to play the full 4 years. So his numbers aren't going to be as high. But if you're just looking at pure skill and ability and perhaps what he could be in the NFL, I mean, Chris Carter's a tough guy to eclipse in terms of the next level, because I think besides Jerry Rice, you could make an argument that he is the most productive player at that position of his era. But he's pretty great. I mean, he's up there. I mean, he is, I think, only the 3rd multiple time consensus All-American in Ohio State history. Wow. 2-time consensus All-American. He's up there with, I'm going to forget who the first guy was, but Archie Griffin was the second. So if you've only got 3 and he's one of them, that speaks pretty highly to where his place is in the the aforementioned pantheon.
So, I mean, the thing about being a receiver, and what I've always said about getting great receivers, is that it's great to get one, but even the best receiver gets targeted, 10, maybe 11 times a game, unless you're just crazy and he can't be stopped. So as far as this offense moving, obviously you have a ton of blue chip receivers. You have a ton of blue chip skill position players, and Marvin Harrison stands out, but like, how essential is he to this offense being good, and what happens if he's not on the field?
I mean, obviously having him on the field is better than not,
Sure.
just because it takes attention to focus on him, and that opens guys up. Emeka Egbuka is another incredible wide receiver. If he comes back next season, which apparently is a possibility, that changes the dynamic of this team, because I think if he were to leave, he could also be a first-round draft pick. I mean, I think he'd be a late first round, maybe early second, but like, he's a potential first-round pick. So you still have that type of skill, assuming Marv isn't there, but it does just move everybody up. As I mentioned, Julian Fleming, who was primarily a blocker at the number 3 wide receiver role, he's gone. But you're going to have Carnell Tate, who's a true freshman, 5-star guy, playing. Brandon Ennis will probably play more, who's another top 100 wide receiver, true freshman. Xavier Johnson, he's been everywhere. He's been a DB. He's been a running back. He's been a wide receiver. He is a 12-year senior or whatever at this point. But he's a leader on the team. He got what Ohio State calls the Block O jersey when a couple years ago you were allowed to use 0 as a jersey, and that's given to a player who is kind of exemplified the work ethic and the strength and the perseverance that you want, dating back to Ohio State legend and Hall of Famer Bill Willis. So like, there's going to be guys. It certainly hurts when Marv is not there, because there's only so much attention that a defense can pay, and when you've got one of the best players in college football, attention is going to be on him. There are still going to be guys, because some of them are younger, it's tough to know what they'll be able to do against an SEC quality defense in a bowl game when they get their first real opportunity to start and to shine. But that's what's fun about bowl games. Like, I said at the beginning, you come into this game and you look at it, it is an exhibition. Like, I mean, yes, it matters on the schedule, but it's not playing towards a conference championship. It's not playing towards a national championship. So you can be a little bit more loosey-goosey when it comes to who plays, how much they play, what you ask them to do. And that's what's fun for me. Like, as a Buckeye fan, as somebody who covers a team, like, that's exciting to see what these young guys can do. So I'm hoping that they still try to throw the ball. I'm hoping that they still try to like get the ball into these guys' hands as much as they normally would. But if Marv doesn't play, which 90-10, like I would put it 90% he's gone, 10% he plays.
Wow.
If he doesn't play, Emeka Egbuka will probably get maybe not the same amount of coverage and attention that Marv would have gotten, but a pretty decent amount. So that puts a lot of the onus on Xavier Johnson, on Carnell Tate, on Brandon Ennis, and we'll see what happens.
So when I was writing the preview for this game, and I was looking at Ohio State's roster, and I was looking at the advanced stats, and man, this is a defense that's better than Georgia's this year, which is outstanding. I can't see any weaknesses. So I guess from someone who has obviously watched the team for a very, very long time.
Yes, I'm old. Yes, go ahead and say it. It's fine. I'm old.
Fill in the blank. This is the greatest Ohio State defense since.
Ooh. I mean, look, this is going to sound like one of those Chicken Little sky is falling things that I mentioned kind of at the beginning with the vocal minority. But 2019, I think, numbers wise, this Ohio State defense was great. I mean, they were a top 10 defense, or maybe top 15 defense last year in the first year of defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, who you guys know, just kind of by word of mouth. It came from Oklahoma State. And then this is his second year where they made another step forward, and they are now a legitimately elite defense in terms of the numbers. That being said, Big Ten offenses aren't that great. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Ohio State played Notre Dame in the non-conference, a fine quality football program. An offensive juggernaut, they are not. And the Big Ten teams that they played this season, Penn State, meh. Wisconsin, meh. Michigan was, they're the number one team in the country, the best team they played on both offense and defense. And like they scored 30 points against Ohio State, which was pretty impressive. And Ohio State just kind of struggled in some areas to in the red zone and things like that. So I don't know what to make of them. I think that it is a very good regular season defense, a potentially great defense. They are number 2 in points allowed per game nationally, behind only Michigan. They're number 3 in total yardage as I'm looking kind of through these stats. They're number 1 in passing defense. They're a little ways down in rushing defense, 24 or something. So they're really, really good. But I don't know whether to say that that's because they are an elite defense or the offensive they played have been average at best. So we'll see. Maybe that's because I'm jaded and spoiled as an Ohio State fan. But coming off of, since Ryan Day took over in 2019, they had an elite defense in 2019. Jeff Hafley was the defensive coordinator. He coached at Ohio State for 1 year. Then he went to become and also ran head coach at Boston College. Since then, the defense has kind of sucked. I mean, they've been bad. And then they bring in Jim Knowles in 2022, improves, another improvement here. But I just don't know that I see a team that I trust like I trust some of those Jim Tressel silver bullet defenses. So they're good. They're a very good defense. I trust them against Big Ten offenses. Do I trust them against someone else? Who knows? I don't know.
So tell me a little bit about this team, because obviously you got 12 games in the bag as evidence of how they've played so far. At the end of the day, what does this offense want to do when they're playing comfortably, when they're playing happily? And what does this defense want to do when they are playing comfortably and they're playing happily?
I'll start on defense because I think that's a little bit easier to dive into. In 2022, like I said, it was a good defense, but their bugaboo was giving up chunk plays. They gave up way too many. And against Michigan in 2022, they had 6 plays of over 50 yards, 4 over 75 yards. It was atrocious. That was because Jim Knowles liked to blitz. He liked to bring pressure, but he completely kind of changed his point of view for this season. And Ohio State, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but going into the final game of the regular season was the only team in the country to only give up 1 play of 40 yards or more. And it was on a fumble Ruski to Rutgers. So yeah, I mean, and whatever, good for Greg Schiano.
Yeah.
But their goal is going to be to keep things in front of them. A lot of people have used the term bend but don't break. And I understand why, because especially early in the season, they were giving up 8, 6, 4, and then they get to the red zone and then they would shut them down and either, get a turnover or force a field goal or whatever. But through the course of the season, that there really wasn't much bending. I mean, they really just were keeping things to 3, 4, 2 punt. And again, a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that Big Ten offenses suck, but that's going to be what they want to do. They want to keep everything in front of them. They don't want to get beat over the top, and that's the way they're going to go. On offense, like all offensive coaches do, they always preach balance. Offense, defense, or I'm sorry, not offense, run, pass. They want to make sure that they are doing both things equally well. With Kyle McCord, though, you actually had to do it. When you had CJ Stroud or Justin Fields or Dwayne Haskins, who were all first-round NFL draft picks and, all set their own various records in terms of Big Ten and Ohio State football, you were able to just throw the ball. I mean, and really just do whatever you wanted from a passing perspective. That wasn't the case this season, and I don't know what they're going to do with Devin Brown. So I think what they're going to try to do is run the ball on early downs, get ahead of the chains, and then let Devin kind of make decisions on third down. Whether that means he's going to get a route tree that kind of gives him some different options, if it's going to be run pass options, if he's going to be able to scramble on his own, they're going to want to try to minimize the number of yards that he has to pick up in late down situations. I think if Travion Henderson plays, that's a huge advantage to that because you can run him on first down, pick up 4 yards. You're in second and manageable. You get a couple more either from him or on a scramble or on some sort of screen pass, and you're in a good situation. So I think it's going to be about early down conversions and yardage for Ohio State because, like I said, their starting quarterback and the number 1 wide receiver are not going to be there, almost certainly for the wide receiver, but definitely for the quarterback. So if they're able to do some good stuff on early downs, I think that is probably going to be the main goal. And then after that is just figuring out what the sticks tell them they're capable of doing.
All right, we'll get you out of here on a prediction, and you can predict whatever you want. You gave me the looseness on your show to kind of go with that with any direction I want. So if it is a score, knock yourself out. If it's a scenario, what give me something that you think is going to happen in this game.
Okay. I imagine that Ohio State is going to come out much more amped up than probably the majority of the fan base. And I think that's going to be a surprise for folks who have kind of sleptwalked through the past month because after losing for the 3rd time to Michigan, like a lot of the fan base was just kind of like, I'm over it. Not over Ohio State football because it's a religion and they're never going to be over it, but like it's the ups and downs. And so maybe they kind of checked out for the past few weeks and are just going to be tuning in and haven't kind of been following along. But I think this team is amped. Like, I think they're ready. I think they're looking forward to this game. I think they want to prove something. I think they want to end this season on a high note. They have not been able to do that for a couple years. And I think they want to make sure that whoever leaves on a positive note. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen on offense, but I do expect the defense to play well, especially if JT Tuimoloau starts and plays. That will essentially give you the majority of the starters who are healthy that will be there. I mean, the defense will be the defense aside from any injuries. So I imagine Ohio State's defense will pose a fairly decent test for a fairly well-balanced Missouri offense. So I do think that we're going to see a low scoring game, whether that's low scoring in terms of like 21-17 final or like 31-27 final. Like, who knows what low scoring is in today's college football, but I think it's going to be close. It really depends on what Devin Brown can do. If he is able to kind of unlock another level of this offense that has not been available to the Buckeyes this season because Kyle McCord just wasn't the guy, then I could see them pulling away a little bit and being able to use some of that 5-star elite blue chip talent on offense. Like I said earlier, or maybe it was on the version of this podcast that we did for Land Grant, I'm not going to bet on Devin Brown to do that just because we haven't seen him do that before. So I'm going to err on the side of it being a fairly close, lower scoring game. I could imagine a situation where just because of the sheer amount of talent that is on offense, depending on who comes back, that Devin Brown could have a really good game. We've seen young Ohio State players do it in bowl games. We saw it in a Rose Bowl a couple seasons ago. But if I had to pick something right now, I would imagine a close scoring game in the 24-21 range. And I'll take Ohio State because look at the shirt and the hat I'm wearing. Of course, I'm picking Ohio State. Sure. But like no scenario in this game would surprise me other than perhaps Ohio State's defense getting run off the field. And has nothing to do with Missouri's offense because as we talked about on our side, like I think they're a really good balanced offense. But I just think like the defense is a little bit more, we know what they are, especially with who's coming back. So that's where I'm going right now. I completely reserve the right to change my mind by the time we publish our official predictions on the 29th. But as of now, not knowing everything, that's where I'm at.
Sure. Very good. That is Matt Tamanini. He's from Land Grant Holy Land. You can find him on Twitter at BWWMatt. That's going to be the preview. Matt, thank you for the time. Appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it, Nate. Have a good one and enjoy the game.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone, or the Google Podcast app for Android, or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.